Hi everyone, and welcome to the history lessons for Itty World. Today we are continuing going deeper into several aspects of the Neolithic Revolution. Last lesson we talked about how agriculture came to be. Today though we're going a step further and we're going to talk about animal domestication. How did farm animals end up being farm animals for human nutrition? Well, first, we have to say that this taking care of certain type of animals and keeping them close enabled these people that were settling in one place to diversify their economy. When combining with farming and the domesticated crops, it was really powerful. The herding of animals, while always, I have to mention this, there's always some hunting wild animals to be kept. It'll give this large importance to farming that will gradually make hunting decrease, but never disappearing. The first settlements that we actually have some information on farming and herding of animals is places like Ali Kosh in western Iran. Just to remind you, the area that we're talking about, this fertile crescent in what is today the Middle East. It is true, we have to say, that several animals had been domesticated before agriculture and tamed in different ways. Every species has its own characteristics, and it also depended on the interactions with the humans. It's not the same as domesticating cattle than sheep. I hope you agree with me. I would like to take the example of dogs, as it's also well known. Let's start with the wolves. Dogs at the start were wolves, and they were actually human predators and scavengers on what humans left over in their camps. So it wasn't a very nice interaction at the start. At some point though, as early as 12,000 BC, people discovered that you could train wolf pups. And this training, using these animals, they could help during hunting or to corner or to track animals. Probably this is not any scientific theory, this is just my opinion. I think that probably that must have happened like children that are left in the forest. Some wolf mother was killed and the humans took in the pups. Probably some children were playing with them and they eventually discovered that these wild animals that they feared, maybe they didn't have to fear them all, that they actually could work together. And from the moment that humans started interacting with wolves, they both developed this interaction, this mutual helping each other that benefited both, because humans had this help to get better hunts. Wolves are faster and better trained than humans, and the wolves had a part of food assured as they combined their efforts with humans. So it was a win-win. Animals need to have something that helps them survive and reproduce to actually stay with humans. If there was no benefit whatsoever, no animal would have been domesticated. The wolves, staying with the example, the wolves that stay with humans, they evolved and developed skills like controlling herds of animals. And it was effectively with the aid of fellow canines, people were able to control these large groups of animals and move them efficiently to the different pastures and across whole countries sometimes. These helpers made a huge difference. And at this time, we have to say, the spread of food producing communities across the Middle East is the same moment when we start seeing the animal domestication for human consumption, basically. So first, agriculture started to spread. The moment people were more comfortable and more societies were working, domesticating plants and using them in their favor, that's when they started, we can say, upgrading and trying to use more animals, keep more animals with them, and change a bit this dynamic with wild animals to domestic animals. Obviously, not all species have been domesticated, but the first ones and the most usual ones, even up to this date, were sheep, goats, cattle, and pigs. These animals provided humans with additional sources of food, meat, milk. They also gave them clothing and crafting materials. These are not to be forgotten, because with wool, leather, bones, horns, you could build containers, in some cases shelters, tents, boats, remember the needles made of wood, and other utensils. Even also, when it was discovered that manure could help enrich the soil, and people could incorporate this to increase the productivity of agriculture, we start seeing the interlink between everything that the animals could provide and the humans. It was in the best interest of the humans to keep the animals fed and healthy. That's what animals were getting out of it, and thanks to that, animals provided with great range of material and nutrition that made societies more complex and a bit better. And of course, this was not the same everywhere in the world. Depending on the climate and the specific needs of the population, there were other uses where they implemented the help of animals. The power for farming and transportation, for travel, for example, that you could be thinking about, actually came later on. But in more cold areas, there were reindeers used to pull sledges from very early stages. In southern areas, they used camels for transport. This was not only for food, as we've said, it's not only for food, and little by little, they start finding more uses for these animals. Admittedly, some species were more difficult to tame than others. I mean, for instance, horned cattle that are faster and better equipped to defend themselves than, for example, sheep. They were actually not domesticated till 6500 BC. And one theory that archaeologists keep for this late domestication is that bulls were probably more taken in for religious reasons at first, rather than source for food or clothing. We have to remember that for a long time, and especially in the Mediterranean area, cattle have been a symbol of fertility cults, and they were vastly used for sacrificial rituals. And if you have a bit of an idea on the area, you just have to look up at countries that had, and even keep to this day, rituals, traditions with bulls. For example, we have Greece, or we have the sad, still to this day, bullfighting in Spain. This tradition has been going for a long time. So it's believed that probably the first bulls were only used for religion, and it wasn't later than they thought, we could actually use them as food resources like the other animals that we have. And just to give you some curious data, science is fascinating, and it's been studied. The DNA has been thoroughly studied, and we know that the impact of dairy farming on Europeans prior to the domestication of cattle is quite different. There was an impact because the prehistoric population weren't able to digest cow milk, actually. So most of the population, and all of the population that has been studied from prehistoric times, they were lactose intolerant. But at some point in history, there was a mutation in the DNA that made it possible for humans to access the nutrition of milk, of animal milk. And the fact that and thanks to this, you would say this is random information, but actually the fact is that we know that most part of the population can drink milk, and this would mean that most human population are descendants from cow herders. It is true that nowadays lactose intolerance is really coming into more and more people, but it can be pointed out that this is more for other reasons. One could be that one part of the population has been passed down the first genes that couldn't deal with it, because not all populations have kept throughout history agriculture or even farming. These populations sometimes struggle still to this day with lactose intolerance. And this was just a small curiosity to finish off this lesson. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next time.